I already mentioned that when I left Geiranderfjord, the sky was covered with clouds and it started to rain. At first lightly, and then more and more heavily. The road kept going up, winding and curving. I have to say that this was the best part of this part of the trip. Although there was a lot of traffic, the ride was easy and pleasant. On the other hand, the rain was getting stronger and the temperature dropped plus 6 degrees Celsius, about 42.8 degrees Fahrenheit. I switched on heated grips. As the road climbed, there were only rocks and cliffs around. Patches of snow began to turn white around. I wondered how high above sea level I had climbed, but I never figured that out. Later, when the rain stopped, I stopped to make coffee, but when I took off my helmet, I realized that it was really cold. My goal at that time was another road included in the list of Norwegian tourist roads, Gamle Strynefjellsvegen. This road is also recommended as worth a visit by some Norwegian motorcyclists, therefore I decided to include it in my route. Gamle Strynefjellsvegen is quite close to the Geiranderfjord, so if you ever travel to these parts of Norway and plan to visit Geiranger, don't miss Gamle Strynefjellsvegen. It's definitely worth a visit. Gamle Strynefjellsvegen is a historic road built by hand at the end of the 19th century. The road was started in 1881 and finished in 1894. The road is narrow and winding, so there are restrictions for long and heavy cars. Tourists with camper vans can still drive here, but larger tourists' buses are already banned. The 27-kilometer-long road is built at an altitude of more than 1 kilometer above sea level. The highest point here is 1,139 meters above sea level. It is only open for a few months a year. During the cold season, usually from October to June, the road is closed. Part of the road is kind of gravel. This is an authentic part of the road where the edges and steep slopes of the road are still marked by stone barriers made by hand 130 years ago. These are roadblocks from a time when horses and carriages were more common than cars. One online travel guide says, I have to admit that riding along this road was one of the biggest adventures and impressions of my trip to Norway. Driving here was not easy due to the peculiarities of the road, the weather conditions, and the psychological discomfort. Was I really ready to ride here on two wheels in such conditions? On the other hand, those views around me killed everything that was negative. And later, when I had rested, I studied for myself what I had experienced there. I promised myself that I would go back and ride that road again, even calmer and slower, stopping at the glacier or going to see the waterfall. There are several observation decks here, from which you can see the waterfalls. However, you can stop and admire the views anywhere. They say that Gamle Strynefjellsvegen is especially beautiful when the mountains are painted in autumn colors. By the way, an interesting fact for people who are interested in the details of World War II. Right next to Gamle Strynefjellsvegen in 1940, something happened that later inspired the authors of the movie called Into the Wild. At that time, during an air battle over these mountains in 1940, both German and British warplanes crashed. Although one crew member was killed, the Germans managed to escape the crash. 2 British pilots also escaped. The weather was harsh, and looking for shelter from the winter frost, the British and Germans met in an abandoned hunter's hut. At first, they distrusted each other, brandishing weapons, but later they realized that they could only survive by cooperating together. They continued to do so until they all eventually fell into the captivity of Norwegian scouts. The British were liberated after a while, continued to fight. One of them was killed in action, and the second survived the war, and in 1977 found a German pilot from that abandoned hunting lodge who was living in Munich at that time. The Germans spent the entire war in prisoner of war camps. The 2 men, a Briton and a German, met this time as friends. This is exactly the story that happened in these mountains. A crashed British plane was raised from the bottom of the lake in 1974, where it had been lying at a depth of 26 meters since the war. They say that the remains of the crashed German plane are still somewhere in these inaccessible mountains. Okay, enough about the history. Let's go back to the old historical road Gamle Strynefjellsvegen. It consists of 2 parts, the old gravel road and the part of the road that is already asphalted in our time. It so happened that I started riding on the old part. It winds at an altitude of more than 1 kilometer above sea level. There are no big ups and downs. However, when asphalt appeared under my wheels, the road began to go down. But it wasn't very easy to ride here either. The road is narrow, winding and steep, and sheep walk along the road. Now, I won't even tell you how many twists and turns I had to overcome before I got back to the normal road. In any case, the views were fantastic. It was raining, as always. I counted sheep walking along the road, and I still couldn't let go of the thought, but is this real? Am I dreaming? Have I really been traveling here for almost 2 weeks? The thought that after 5 years I was finally there, where the pandemic had once blocked my path, still didn't quite sink into my head. As I was descending the old Gamle Strynefjellsvegen road and turning onto the modern road, the rain stopped. Later it started again, and then it stopped again. This is how it is in Norway. Sometimes you can't take off your rain gear for days in a row. It starts and stops raining several times a day. When riding a motorcycle, stopping to put on and take off your rain gear several times a day would be very irrational, especially since rain gear usually protects well from the wind. As I already mentioned, the air temperature was low when I was traveling around Norway, so the wind felt unpleasant, and the rain gear protected me from that perfectly. The weather conditions that await travelers in Norway are best described by the website Visit Norway.com, which presents tourism in this country. They say there's a popular saying in Norway, there's no such thing as bad weather, only bad clothing. This is a country where you should bring your nicest bikini, the warmest woolen sweaters, the highest heels, and your coolest wind and waterproof gear. And this goes for all seasons. Rain or snow, the weather does not scare the Vikings. Norwegians are adept at dressing according to the weather and will head out even when it's rainy or windy. In Fjord, Norway, the weather is constantly changing. Don't be surprised if you get a rain, sun, wind, and even snow in the same day, almost any time of the year. Northern Norway is a great place to visit any time of the year. During winter, you can experience the northern lights. North of the polar circle, the sun is up all night during summer, a phenomenon known as the midnight sun. Thanks to the temperate waters of the Gulf Stream, Norway has a much warmer and milder climate than other parts of the world at the same latitude, such as Alaska, Greenland, and Siberia. If you remember to dress according to the weather, you can enjoy the different elements. Come rain or shine, says the website Visit Norway.com. I have told you a lot about Gamle Strynefjellsvegen, but there are many historical roads in Norway, and I have ridden some of them, some in Lofoten, some in the far north, and some in the central part of the country. I wanted to visit Gaularfjellsvegen because of the Utsikten observation deck located there, which is 700 meters above sea level. The views from here are amazing. Along the way, as always, the eye was delighted with the wonderful views, rapid rivers, mountains reaching a height of 1.5 kilometers, and the winding roads in all directions. Standing at the Utsikten observation deck and looking down, you can clearly see the descending road with all the hairpins on it. Look what awaits ahead. A British tourist standing nearby asked when he saw me taking pictures of those bends. He and his company had just climbed up the same bends in a rented car. He says that there was a lot of working for driver while going up. And now, he says, even the shivers run down his spine when he sees where he was going. He wouldn't want to go down here. After some discussion, we finally agreed that the biggest fears live in our heads. After all, if he hadn't seen that road from above, he would have concentrated and driven without thinking about what it looked like. While riding down those steep and very narrow bends, I thought about the fact that the requirement in driving schools for motorcyclists to be good at U-turns is intended for exactly the kind of situations I was in at the time, riding on mountain hairpins. There were no cars, the road was empty, so I could practice in real conditions. The only perhaps not very pleasant nuance of the training was that it was raining. There was a lot of water on the road. I had to do everything quite carefully so that the motorcycle did not slip. And I also have to watch out for the sheep walking along the road. Just here on the right, you can see a few sheep are resting on the side of the road. There are a lot of sheep here, and they roam freely like reindeer in the north. As usually, when I descended into the valley, the rain stopped and the ride became quite pleasant. That day, I crossed a couple of fjords, and in the evening I visited an ancient church. Since it was already evening, work hours was over, so I didn't have time to go inside. I only looked at it from the outside. I stayed at a small campsite for the night. Although the weather was not bad when I arrived here, all the forecasts promised heavy rain at night. Therefore, I gave up the idea of spending the night in a tent and rented a cabin. And it was the right decision. The morning was very rainy. I put on my rain gear again and set off. It was raining, but I could see on the map that there were several long tunnels waiting for me on the way, which meant that if I went into a tunnel, I would be able to dry out a bit. But what I found in the tunnels in this part of Norway really surprised me. I bow my head to the Norwegian engineers. Some of the tunnels were quite long. One was 25 kilometers, the other 11 kilometers, etc. In those long tunnels are added a lot of strange pockets where there was plenty of room to stop. However, it was forbidden to stand there for long, or it is not necessary. Those pockets were illuminated in colors. It seemed very interesting. In one such place, the colors even changed. But it wasn't the lights that surprised me. It is not a difficulty to hang colored lights here. What surprised me was that the roads cut through the tunnels as if this were not the inside of a mountain, but some kind of soft mass in which you can make holes as you like. There are roundabouts inside the tunnels. The roads diverge here, converge, branch again, and dive further into the tunnels. On that rainy day, my first destination for the day was the Stegastein observation deck. The observation deck at that location juts out about 30 meters above a 650-meter abyss with a fjord at the bottom Judging by the images on the internet, the view is impressive. However, I realized that I would not see it as I was climbing up the steep, narrow, and very winding road. As I climbed, I entered a cloud. Everything around was soaked from the rain, and in places the road was covered in fog. The higher I climbed, the worse it got. When I finally reached the observation deck, the view from it was only of a gray cloud. Well, what are you going to do? Maybe next time I will see that view. I looked up at the cloud and continued riding. Finally, as I was descending the same path, the clouds cleared at one point and I found a spot to stop. Not the views I was expecting, but still very beautiful. As I moved on, something happened, and I consider it the most dangerous incident of the trip. Everything ended well, but it was like a cold shower, reminding me that on these Norwegian roads you can't relax for a moment. It all happened on a very narrow stretch of road where two cars can't pass each other. A car and a motorcycle can still pass each other on this road in some places, but definitely not everywhere. At one point the road curves slightly to the left. It's a blind spot. You can't see the turn completely, it's blocked by a rock. I decide to ride slower into the turn. Then I started to turn and oops. A car appears in front of me from behind the rock. The Mercedes was driving close to its right edge, and I'm clearly too far to the left in the turn. I press the brakes. I'm already putting my foot on the asphalt, and there, it's slippery. It's raining. I change my foot, and again, until I finally feel that I'm standing still. Mercedes also brakes. We successfully stopped in front of each other safely. It all took about a second and a half. I turn motorcycle's handlebar to the right and slowly go around the car. If I had started the turn closer to the right edge, I would have seen the car earlier, and it didn't see me at the last second either. In this case, there was no speed, so we both stopped. It happens, you know. And you know what's the funniest thing about this situation? That the Mercedes was from my country, with Lithuanian license plates. I only saw that later when I reviewed the footage. My new stop is the Viking Valley. This is another museum dedicated to the Vikings, but it is different from what was in Lofoten. If in Lofoten there is a lot of open space and no show, then in the Viking Valley everything is compressed, concentrated with some kind of entertainment for tourists. A kind of small Viking village has been built here where the whole Viking lifestyle is presented. Crafts, warfare, etc. They show some kind of show here. Vikings fight with swords. There are many guides who lead around the village and tell about the Vikings and their lifestyle. This is included in the ticket price. There is more entertainment for tourists here than just watching a show. Tourists can try their hand at axe throwing or archery. When I arrived at the Viking Valley, it was raining heavily. But the rain does not stop the village from thriving. Everything goes on as if it were not there. Tourists suffer, and the employees do not seem to care. I walked inside in full motorcycle gear and a helmet. This drew admiration from the staff. Nice hat. A bearded Viking greeted me in the doorway of one of the huts. He said he appreciated my decision to stay out of the rain. I have a motorcycle myself and no car. I ride it all the time, so I like the way you look, he told me. It seems you have solved the clothing issue best in this village today, laughed another guide, leading a small group of tourists with her as she passed by. When I left Viking Valley, it was still raining heavily. Water was falling from the sky, coming off the road. Sometimes I felt like I was swimming, but as the Norwegians say, there is no such thing as bad weather, only bad clothing. A little further from Viking Valley, an impressive waterfall waited me, Geiranderfjord I. Its spray gets everyone soaked before they even get close. Although when it rains like this, who cares what gets you soaked? Rain or waterfall spray. It rained until the evening that day. The conditions for riding a motorcycle were not the most pleasant. The tunnels saved me a little. There are many of tunnels in this part of Norway. They are long, warm and dry. There are more than 1,200 tunnels in Norway, with a total length of over 1,000 kilometers. The world's longest tunnel for cars is also in Norway. It is the Lærdal Tunnel. Its length is 24.51 kilometers, 15.23 miles. I also had to go through that tunnel on this trip. An interesting experience. Claustrophobic people might not like it. But for me, such a long tunnel that day was just what I needed. At the end of that rainy day, I encountered another thing that I had never encountered in Norway before: traffic jams. Some were caused by road repairs, others by reasons that were never clear to me. At one point, I even had to cancel a planned visit to a beautiful place, because my navigation system calculated that I would spend an unjustifiably long time in traffic jams. My navigation showed me that I had about 50 kilometers left to go, but due to traffic jams, I could waste 1.5 to 2 hours. The traffic was at a standstill. No one was even driving in opposite direction, and Google Maps kept extending my arrival time. I had to make a decision. I had to return the same way. 3 to 4 hours in traffic jams for the sake of 15 minutes of admiring a beautiful view seemed too irrational to me. I will remind you that it was raining heavily that day, so I had to turn around, leaving the planned object for another time. I was approaching the big cities and it was already felt on the roads.